Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's hybrid town hall about the proposal to restore, improve, and expand our aging school district facilities. Because we are taking questions in this hybrid format, we plan to alternate questions between questions asked in person and those submitted online. We're going to hear up to 3 questions from our in-person audience, and then I will read aloud the 3 questions that were submitted by our at-home audience. We'll go back and forth like that and try to provide ample time for all questions. Now I'll turn things over to Dr. Rosetta Treese, Superintendent of Hopewell Valley Regional School District, to open the presentation portion of the evening. Dr. Treese.
Thank you for my panelists who are here tonight that took time out of their very busy schedules to join me today and share the work that we have been engaged in for quite some time now. I also want to acknowledge all of you who are here tonight. I know you all are very busy and you shared questions ahead of time that we hope we'll get to all of them today. We are prepared to answer all your questions. This is not a traditional board meeting. We set it up this way purposefully because we don't want to bind you to 3 minutes. We don't want to have that very formal setting. This is really an opportunity for us to answer any of your questions and just really have that exchange of ideas of how we came to this point for those of you who are just hearing about the referendum, or you may have questions about it. I'd like to thank our Board of Education for their support, but specifically the members of our Finance and Facility Committee who are here tonight. We have our board president, Ms. Williams-Galliano. We have Dr. Lillistein. We have our Finance and Facilities Chair, Alice Resnick, Dr. Resnick, and we have Mr. Mark Peters, who also sits on that committee. We also are joined by 2 other board members, Dr. Genovese, who's here, and also Mr. Slotman. They may say some comments at the end, but they really are just here in support as they were very engaged in this process with us. And this process could not have moved on without their approval and without their oversight. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the information tonight because I'm very interested to get to your questions. So first, I'm going to start with the basics. What is a board referendum? It is an opportunity for districts like ours to ask the voters like you for permission to sell, to borrow money by selling bonds. Using this mechanism, the school district, if this is approved, will have access to state funds that we would not otherwise have access to, that can defray the cost to you, the taxpayer, and what you have to pay back. So again, that access to state aid can only be accessed if we go through a bond referendum. Yes, we plan as a district for many projects, and we have a list of projects by priority. We have them going on simultaneously. And as those things are going on, if there's an opportunity to go out for a grant, Mr. Calavita does that. And there are times when the projects get to a state or the number that a bond referendum is really a more fiscally responsible way for the district to move projects forward. We can plan long-term while also saving you, the taxpayer, money, because you now cannot have to pay 100% for that project. You will get some reimbursement from the state based on the type of projects that we're proposing. So it's a good way to plan ahead. Yes, we always plan for these projects, but when we have a major group of projects that we need to complete all at once, this is really the best way to go about it for the taxpayer. Some folks had questions about why are we doing this in September and not waiting to the vote in November? Well, time is of the essence with some of the projects that we have that are coming to a head. We've had some major facilities issues. The way we've been picking them off one at a time and just chasing emergencies as they come up are really not the best way to address the age of our buildings and some of the challenges that we are facing. In addition to that, we are facing some growth with the developments that are coming online. Mr. Billy will talk about that a little bit today. Though we are not pressed yet, we are starting to see the enrollment very quickly. And we know it's going to overrun the capacity of the way we use our buildings now at Bear Tavern specifically. The middle school and the high school are in a good place right now, but Bear Tavern is already being pressed. So the timing is so that we can get these projects started sooner than later. And specifically, if we're going to build, doing that is going to bid now, early on, before other districts, before other schools do that, can give us the best chance of starting these projects in the summer when kids are out and not impact them as learners. And some of the other facilities projects that we can't do when they're in the building, hopefully we can get those set up and going in the summertime. So restoring our schools is a priority for us. Restoring our schools, protecting our students, and also planning for expansion and growth, right? So here is a picture of one of those surprises that I was telling you about. We plan all the time for projects. We have a long list of things that we look at. We're constantly assessing, prioritizing what needs to be done now. Are there opportunities to find monies to support through funding and grants, opportunities to do that? We were able to pull one of the projects off the referendum, which was a fire alarm project, by doing that. And then we have things like this. So somebody decided, being very generous to the district, to plant trees in one of our courtyards. It happened to be a redwood tree. It probably went in when I was a little one. And now it's a very large redwood that's roots had grown into the pipes at Timber Lane and caused a major problem. This problem shut down bathrooms all over the campus. You see how we had to dig up the floor, very costly surprise. We've had surprises like this in all of our buildings, including the board office that we also maintain, with old galvanized piping breaking, things like that. So while the district works very hard to get ahead on these projects, these sorts of things kind of take the savings and reroutes it to, let's restore and fix this thing. And then we can't fix the thing that we planned for. And that gets put on the back burner. So if we're going to really shore up our buildings and stop chasing these sorts of things, a referendum is an opportunity to take a big bite out of those projects while also saving you money, so that when these things come up, it doesn't, kind of derail our plans to keep our facilities in good shape. So again, 3 reasons that we need more space. We do expect some growth at Bear Tavern. The schools are not used in the same way they used to be used back in the day when we were kids, or even some of you when your kids were in school. The old 30 kids in a classroom and cemetery rows, and kids to the 28 and 30 in a trailer. We don't do that anymore. Our class size is below 20 on average, which we know, and Mr. Billy will talk about that a little bit. Mr. Nardo will talk about the value of small class size, which is something our parents demand and expect from our district at this point. We have special programs in science labs and calming rooms. We offer extensive opportunities for students to have electives and things like that that spread out the number of classrooms that we use. We have all-day kindergarten. We didn't used to offer that. We have preschool that we've expanded quite a bit here in our district. So all of those things require us to have more size, to need more size. Mr. Billy, did you want to share a little bit about what you're seeing at Bear Tavern in your time at Bear Tavern?
Well, am I on? Okay, yes. Yeah, we ended the year last year with 437 students, and we presently have 452 students to start the year this year. Well, this week. Two more are joining us tomorrow, 2 more by the end of the week we know of. So the growth has been what we expected, but we're starting to fill up our classrooms where some of our grade levels, we had to add, in the middle of the summer, we had to add another 4th grade classroom in order to keep our classes, less than 25. And right now, like I said, I imagine by the end of the year, based on the building, we will continue to grow our classes into the mid-20s, maybe even higher.
Thank you. And Mr. Nardo, would you like to share a little bit about how special education has changed a little bit over the years?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening. So currently in our district, we have about 800 students that we provide special education services for. This is actually my 16th year working in the district. And over the course of, I'd say, the last decade, we've truly expanded our special education programming. One of the expansions is preschool. We have preschool classrooms across the 4 elementary schools, and they keep growing rapidly. And they also allow us to provide important early intervention services for our children. So they can access the therapies and the interventions that they need to be able to access their learning. We also have quite a few special education classrooms and special programs that we didn't have in the last 10 years, where we're able to keep our kids in their neighborhood schools. and provide them what we call least restrictive environment, being able to provide them opportunities to be with their neighborhood peers and have the same kind of learning experiences as all of our children.
Thank you. And so the final reason why we're coming to you as a community and asking you for to go to referendum is to protect our students. As we face these failures to our infrastructure that some we expect, some that we don't expect, and we keep fighting that battle to do that, with most of our budget really being made up, most of our general operating budget being the programs that we offer your children. The money that we're able to squirrel away is not in keeping with the repairs that we need to make. And then we still have things like these trailers, which have some of our youngest and most vulnerable students outside the buildings. With the way the climate is changing, with extreme weather conditions coming up, we are actually running drills on what happens if a tornado comes through, what happens if a sudden flood happens, right? We know we've had that in this community. And then we have our little ones outside in these trailers. That really is something that we should change. So as we go down the road of this referendum, we were having the conversation with the Finance and Facilities Committee. They were asking us, okay, what are the things that are going to cause our kids to have to stay home? And what projects should we take care of now? Because we don't want to come to the community and ask them this again, right? We just asked them this and now here we are again. And one of the things that we were all adamant about was that we need our kids inside the building. So making extensions onto Bear Tavern, onto Tollgate does exactly that. Not only do we address any additional enrollment that we may have to face in the future, but we're bringing our little bops back in the building where they belong with their friends, where they're safe. And also we can build those rooms to receive our youngest students that need special bathrooms and sinks in those rooms. We can make them all fitted for kindergarten or preschoolers so that any students that come can be in those spaces, and that we're doing what we need to do to protect you all if there is growth for those spaces to be provided.
Those, and just as a frame of reference, those trailers that you see there in the back of Bear Tavern, they were brought to the district in 1994. They were never meant to stay this long. This project has been kicked down the road so many times. It's always been on the list of things, and for some reason, it always gets taken away. It's time that these buildings are done away with, and then students are brought back inside the buildings.
I want to talk a little bit about avoiding catastrophic failures, because I think folks don't realize well, in the last year, I think that the parents that still have students in district realize that. Just last year, we had the Timber Lane floor thing, right? So right now, we're probably going to need to dig up that floor again because there's another pipe problem that we can't get to the bottom of that's probably going to approach the $1 million mark by the time we get to correcting the issue. A good number of the bathrooms on one side of the building don't work in Timber Lane. The students went half a year last year without them working. High school had a half day on the first day of school because we had a water bypass system go over the weekend. And I was here with plumbers and emergency plumbers to try to fix and correct that. Luckily, we were able to get a part and fix that for now. We had a well fail at Timber Lane last year, which if our very ingenious plumber and some help and calling all over states to find a piece to kind of set it up for now until we can get the real piece in, we would have had to close school indefinitely. We had fire trucks at Bear Tavern and Stony Brook for fire systems, HVAC systems, motors that burned out. We had flooding at Stony Brook just a couple weeks ago where water was in the building from the drainage issue that is on the referendum. These are things that we have been chasing in addition to the galvanized pipes that broke at the board office, the flooding and water damage that we got to the media center in Bear Tavern, many other things that have gone wrong, boilers, HVAC systems, the list goes on and on. These are the kinds of things that we're chasing. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I have a money pit at home, a 1970 special. She's not built that well, right? She's not, every time you open up something, there's to code. We plan all the time, oh, we're gonna get the house sided, and then the water heater breaks, right? Or there's a plumbing issue where there's something leaking and you have to track that down. Well, imagine having that across 8 buildings, 2 buildings that are 100 years old, 3 built in the 60s, and the baby was built in 2004. This is what we're chasing. So when folks say that, are you working on these? Oh, absolutely, we're working on that. And I'm not even counting the paving, the dead ash trees that we're trying to take down away from the community's property first, and then, making sure that anything's dangerous around children second. You know how much tree removal costs. We have like a forest of trees out here that we have to chase. So all of those things are part of this maintenance projects that will be ongoing. So when folks see that capital reserve, the capital reserve is there for all of those emergencies. And I know it sounds like a lot, but 7 million, which is what is in our capital reserve now, based on the emergencies and things that we've had, is not a lot. It's not an account that you should ever spend down to zero, because you never know when there's going to be an issue. Yes, it might be a boiler. We have 16 boilers just in this building. And it's not the kind of boiler in your house that would cost what it costs in your house. So when we say that we're facing the very real possibility that if we keep limping along the way we do, that there might be a catastrophic failure, I'm telling you that's where we are now. So at this point, the improvements that we are asking touch every building. They all have to do with expanding size for our students where we need to do that. But most of it, a good portion of it, is protecting our students and making sure that they have safe spaces to learn in, and that we continue to provide the quality of education that you've become used to. So again, all of these buildings are going to be touched. The high school is going to get the least of the renovations, because they just had a major renovation projects here with the last referendum. But at this point, I'm going to pass it back to Ms. Lintor so you can move the program along so we can hear about these renovations in our buildings.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Treese. FVHD architects and planners have provided their professional guidance to Hopewell Valley for years. And so now we would like to hear directly from these professionals about the details of these projects. George?
So thank you. Okay. As Dr. Treese said, the projects that are being contemplated in the referendum will affect all the district schools. More importantly, touch all the kids within the schools and their daily educational environment where they spend a good portion of their day. I'll talk a little bit about what each of those projects entails at each of the schools, starting with Central High School. And so here, as Dr. Treese said, not as much of an impact in the referendum, but we are looking at some roof repairs and roof replacements primarily. Now, we did do in the 2016 referendum, we did replace some roofs, but we replaced the roofs that were at that time out of warranty and in condition that required that they be replaced. And we took advantage back then of the state money that was available because that project was eligible for state support. Now, 7 years later, 8 years later, we are looking at another group of roofs at the high school that now need to be replaced, also out of warranty, and using the same criteria, the condition of the roof warrants that it be replaced. And that is true of all the buildings where there's roof replacement contemplated within the referendum. Again, taking advantage, that is an eligible project, taking advantage of those funds from the state. Roofing is a relatively expensive project, so it's good to have that extra boost. And we do have areas where we do have spot roof failures that have to be addressed on an emergent basis, which is not ideal, obviously, for a roof leak.
George, just for additional information, we have replaced roofs in the past with ROD grants.
Yes,
But on this round of ROD grants, roofs were not a priority, so we were not able to get funding
by the state, yeah.
by the state for
Yeah,
those.
right.
So, that's why at this time, roofs were a major part of this particular request
Mhm.
due to the lack of other state funding for these types of projects.
Yep. Right.
And the other thing with the ROD grants, districts can apply for those ROD grants and you may be approved, but you have to have the funding to pay for it up front.
Mhm.
Right? And then you get reimbursed. So again, running your coffers down to zero is not a smart idea, because if you have this opportunity, and Bob Calavita is a very strong business administrator. He is constantly coming to the committee, talking to me, we're talking together and thinking about, what is this an opportunity? Can we do this? And moving things around so that we can optimize opportunities like being able to get a ROD grant. But you have to have the funds to put up front to go out to.
It's actually a
that.
good
Well,
point. We are going to be doing a ROD grant project this coming summer of 2025. We removed it from the referendum because we were, if this doesn't go through, we are still need to do these boilers. This is a very large boiler project in excess of $1.5 million, I believe.
Yep.
That the state will be funding approximately $600,000 of. They did approve that particular project as it was what the types of project they were looking for. Otherwise, we would have to take all of that money to fund it ourselves. So we do look for other areas to fund outside of a referendum.
Definitely, and and in the past, when ROD grants were available, took advantage of those as well, right, Bob? Quite a few ROD grant projects in the past years when they are not available at all times. State makes those available as an allocations, and when they are made available, the district takes advantage of those to the extent that they're able to fund those projects up front. So they've been very successful with the ROD grants. We are going to also at the high school be restoring the pavement in the solar parking lot, student lot, where all of the solar canopies are located. We're going to make improvements to the stadium concession stand and place restrooms out there, accessible restrooms, to create a much, first of all, much more functional stadium, much more secure, so people don't have to come and go to leave the facility and come back. That's a security concern. And of course, to provide accessibility and just better functionality for the stadium complex. And we are going to be doing some HVAC. We did quite a bit of HVAC work at the high school in the last referendum, but we did not do the 400 wing because again, that did not rank high enough in the priority list at that time. Those units now are beginning to cause Mr. Quinn, Director of Facilities, some difficulties. So it is time to replace those units, which are original to that wing of the building from the 1990s. So that equipment has reached the end of its useful life, in addition to causing functionality issues. And HVAC equipment nowadays, for those of you who may be familiar with everything that's going on with refrigerants and with the energy subcodes, much stricter now requirements for HVAC projects. So it's not as easy to just replace an HVAC unit in like kind. There are a lot of requirements for energy recovery, ventilation control, quantities of ventilation, humidity control, temperature control, and additional filtration requirements. So HVAC units now, projects now, are not like they were back when schools were originally built. Okay, so high school will be getting HVAC improvements in the 400 wing, the science wing.
So before you move on, I just wanted to, because one of a question that came up as I was looking through the questions that came in early was about the concession stand / restrooms. Since we've had some issues of late, and all of you I know are watching the news and see some of the violence that schools are facing, and some local school districts very close to us had an issue where students came to football games, outside events with weapons. And since then, we are now regulated that anyone who comes into a game may not leave and then re-enter. Our bathrooms are unfortunately outside of the stadium here. So folks that come into our games, once they're in, they're in. If they leave, they can't come back. And then the restroom opportunity for you on our field is a porta potty. So if you're not able-bodied, or you're like me and you're just not doing that, right? There's no accessible restroom for you on our fields. So that's something we wanted to address for our folks that are not able-bodied, for some of our older folks that are out there that want to come enjoy watching their grandkids or play, and then there's no restroom for them that's really accessible. So as we were talking about that with the architects, they suggested, well, if you're doing bathrooms, why wouldn't you just expand and just do the concession stand? Because it is an opportunity for now revenue. We have our band boosters, folks selling foods and things like that at our games. It's an opportunity for us to make money with that space, and also sell concessions during our graduations and some of the other ceremonies that are available. So it's really not that we wanted a fancy concession stand. It was bathrooms, and it was an opportunity for us to create a store front for our kids to make revenue for their sports, and maybe defray the cost of our extracurricular activity, because we are proud of all the things that we offer to our students, sports and those sorts of things. And we don't charge parents for that. And this is a way we can defray that cost.
Thank you. So moving on to Timberlane Middle School, again, roof replacement, following the same process that was used at Central High School to decide on the appropriate roofs to be replaced. Exterior doors, we're going to see as a recurring theme in some of the buildings at Bear Tavern, for example, also Timber Lane, maybe I think a few doors at Hopewell, but those doors are select doors that are causing difficulties in terms of being able to be secured properly and reliably, and are also starting to deteriorate. So those doors were selected because they need to be replaced. And I don't think I have to tell anybody how important it is to have exterior doors that are secure in a school building. So that is a definite security project. We're refurbishing the front entrance at Timber Lane as well. Some of you have seen that front entrance, and there is some deterioration of the brick piers. And we do want to make that a more attractive entranceway, a more secure entranceway, an entranceway it's easier to supervise, a barrier-free, compliant entranceway, and more secure. Okay, so in keeping with what was done at Central High School, not at the scale that it was done at Central High School, that's the plan for Timber Lane.
Again, just to add a little more to that, Tom, talk a little bit about the surface there and why that's become a danger.
Yeah, you have, the concrete itself is crumbling and falling apart on the walkway, and the canopy overhead is rusting and deteriorated. It's quite old. The lighting fixtures that illuminate it at night are so rusted we can't even get the doors open, and they're obsolete. So you can't just buy a new one and simply replace it. The only way is to completely reconfigure it.
So again, this was part of a process, many projects on a list, obviously large school district, to prioritize projects based upon conditions such as deterioration, security, building integrity, those types of things. They're high priority projects, okay? Turf fields at AFT. A lot of discussion went into this project and the improvement it will make for the students who participate in sports right now. And Mr. Calavita can probably interject on this, who will have to be transported to remote fields along with the coaches, along with the assistants, along with the trainer and the training staff. And this transports the kids several miles, right? Several
Sure.
miles to Federal
That's
City
correct.
Road, right?
The
Yeah.
trainers don't go with the kids. The trainer is here
Yeah.
and then they go off-site.
Right, offsite.
Right. So for years, we've been transporting students to the Twin Pines area. We've also transported students in over time to the tennis courts over by the Stony Brook area. We also transport baseball players to the municipal complex. So we have students leaving campus for their athletic events pretty much every day during the summer or the spring and fall seasons. When they're there, they're dropped. And buses take them and they leave to do other things around the district, taking teams other places, picking up other students. If there's an issue with a student or anything that happens, an accident, those students are there until a bus returns or we can get word that we need to get somebody back. Our AED machines, our trainers are on this campus, the Timber Lane Central High School campus. And one of the goals in committee was to bring our students back home where we can control the safety and security of those students better than off-site. In addition, the fields, especially in the fall and spring, when those are heavily used, we were finding that the overuse of those fields were creating dangerous conditions. If we got any weather, as you know, in the fall and in the spring, you get a lot of rain. The fields deteriorate faster and we can't get the kids on the fields. We have cancellations of games and practices. So again, safety, bring them home, but also the safety of the fields themselves and preventing overuse was a reason why we wanted to bring and initiated this project.
Yeah, I was going to mention that just the storms, right, folks? We've been having, some very large rainstorms, and Tom will tell you that it's hard to recover from those storms. You have one of those 500-year storms, and we don't just have one. We've had several of those storms in the past 9 months. We've had 3, I think. And it depends on where you're located. Storms, they do sometimes are isolated to certain areas, but Tom, you could speak towards how hard it is to recover a
The
field.
one just a few weeks ago dumped 7 inches of rain right here in Pennington Borough. You went 2 miles north, you got hardly anything. As Dr. Treese had said, that particular rainstorm allowed over 300 gallons of water to flood into Stony Brook. It also ruins the fields. You get a lot of runoff across the fields, and it takes more time to recover. And then you're pushing people back and you're canceling events because the field isn't ready. So if we have turf, it's quicker restoration for the kids to play.
In years past, we also used to be able to rest fields. We used to take
Right.
fields offline for an entire year so that the field could regenerate itself and develop a stronger turf. We don't have that luxury anymore. We have a marching band, a great marching band that practices out at AFT. And if you know anything about, repeated traffic along a particular field, it prevents grass from growing back long term. This would enable those fields to be rotated with the band and other folks being able to get on that field. The field also has uses for our phys ed classes. And there's been great interest since these were announced that our local athletic associations are willing to provide support for those fields through rentals. So, we see this as a win-win for all in this kind of an environment.
Yes, and part of the reason you were talking about of us not being able to rest fields is our kids are very active and involved, which we appreciate. If they're active and involved in learning and engaged in extracurricular activities, they're not getting in trouble in town, right? They're doing something that's positive. But that causes overuse on our one field that we do have that is up to that quality, where people rent it out for tournaments and play beyond what happens in our regular school year athletics. It's used by the community as well. And that would also be another extension to the community for those who may not even have kids that are going to school. Maybe they have them in private school or other things, but they're on travel teams and rec, and they can use that space as well. And we can generate some revenue with those rentals. We do rent the high school field, but probably a little bit too much because everyone wants to be on that one space.
So Timberlane, again, HVAC projects here in the Aux gym. No air conditioning at this time. I think it's the only gym, Tom, right? That's
It
not
is
air
the
conditioning
only
just-
space in the district
Only space.
that's not air conditioned.
So, and again, a project that was under consideration previously, but now has come to the top of the list as a necessity, especially with the very hot weather we've been seeing. I think we can all agree the days are getting warmer. So that project is very important for the Aux gym. There'll be a floor replacement there as well. That floor is the original floor is worn out and needs to be replaced. And while we're doing the air conditioning, we're going to take care of the floor and just kind of make that gym a little bit, spruce it up, make it a little bit nicer. And then we are going to be doing a large HVAC project at Timberlane. Again, obsolete equipment has been causing maintenance and repair difficulties for the district in the two main B and C classroom wings, which are in the back of the building. And there again, just so everyone understands, and I won't go into too many technical terms, but the systems that we have been putting into all of the schools, and we're going back many years now, a lot of HVAC projects in different sections of different buildings use enhanced ventilation, which is taken through a separate ventilation loop and is filtered and conditioned. And also the amount of ventilation air that's brought in is controlled. So we're not excessively heating or cooling air that we don't need. So that's been kind of the practice here in the district now more than 10 years, I would say. It's longer than that, probably closer to 15 years. Okay. Though the projects we're going to do at Timberlane are going to follow that same design logic that was employed on the other projects. And equipment, of course, there's continuous advances in HVAC equipment. So that's Timberlane. I think I covered everything on Timberlane. Talk a little bit now about Bear Tavern Elementary School. And I'll get to the addition at Bear Tavern in just a moment. But again, we have some infrastructure issues at Bear Tavern that need to be addressed. Pumping station, we have a system at Bear Tavern because there are no sanitary lines near Bear Tavern School. We have to pump the sanitary flow to a offsite fairly far away. And so we need to improve that system and put some redundancy in there. The system that's there is at the end of its useful life. It's starting to show we already had some problems with that system. So we're going to replace that equipment so we can ensure the reliability of that sanitary disposal system. We're going to do the same thing with the water well. And Bear Tavern is also on a well system. There's no city water available up there. And we're going to do a duplicate well system, a redundant well system, a primary and backup well pump system, okay? Entrance, a canopy, not the staff entrance canopy. We're going to replace that. That is deteriorated. We're also, again, using the same logic as the other schools, doing select roof replacements on roofs that are coming out of warranty and are in poor condition and need to be replaced. And again, exterior doors, and in particular, the storefront along Bear Tavern that connect all of the pods are extremely deteriorated. And again, that's a project that's been on the list for a long time that needs to be done. So that is on the list for this referendum. But again, that's infrastructure and that's deteriorated infrastructure. We're going to make some HVAC improvements at Bear Tavern. Quite a bit of HVAC work has already been done at Bear Tavern School using some of the techniques I described earlier. We're going to go to the main office and the cafeteria, kind of like spot areas, the media center, equipment we couldn't do in the previous referendum. We're going to do that this time, and that will take care of the HVAC equipment at Bear Tavern School. Some classroom doors need to be replaced at Bear Tavern Elementary School. They'll be replaced with security intruder locks, security glazing, to create a much more robust door into a classroom. Of course, we're going to have that 10 classroom addition also at Bear Tavern. Primarily, we want to get the students out of the modular buildings that have been there since 1994, 1994.
Yep.
Okay, now, and we're going to keep those buildings, but they're going to be used for administrative purposes and storage. They're not going to be used for children any longer. And that will allow, as Mr. Billy said earlier, various improvements to programs, okay, for the children, especially those special needs programs, more pre-K rooms / kindergarten rooms, be able to bring more students in for the pre-K program ultimately. And then we're going to make some modernization just of the cafeteria and the hallways to just kind of spruce those things up. Going to try to, we will make some improvements to the cafeteria because we're going to have, a potential of some more kids coming into Bear Tavern who are actually already there. Create a little bit more room, create a little bit of a better kitchen serving line. So that is also a project slated for Bear Tavern School. Hopewell Elementary. At Hopewell, there'll be some limited roof replacement using the same logic. Exterior doors, same logic, deteriorated doors, doors that need to be replaced because they're not as secure as they could be. Ultimately, that could be an issue, and we want to prevent that from occurring. And obsolete HVAC systems within Hopewell. Hopewell, we've done quite a bit of HVAC work at Hopewell already. We did the primary wing. We are just finishing now a boiler replacement project. We converted all of the steam heat in that school to hot water heat, which in itself is a great project. And that's kind of the foundation that will allow us to continue to expand and get rid of the obsolete equipment and take care of the rest of the building, particularly the older parts of the building. Okay, so that's what that is about. Again, that's a project that's been on the list for a long time. Fortunately, the district was able to fund the replacement of the steam boilers, and now we're going to get to the project of replacing the rest of the equipment in the older classroom wing, the 3-story wing of Hopewell Elementary. Okay, again, classroom doors in keeping with what's being done at Bear Tavern, and then there are I think two kindergarten rooms that are getting bathrooms, enlarged bathrooms placed into them for barrier-free accessibility. So that's existing bathrooms are basically being enlarged, okay, to create larger bathrooms. With Stony Brook Elementary School, some limited roof replacement there. A lot of Stony Brook is shingles, as you all, I'm sure know, are some low slope roofs there, flatter roofs, called flat roofs, but they're not really flat. And they're being replaced because they're at the end of their warranty period and they're also showing signs of deterioration. So we're going to replace those. Exterior doors, again, at Stony Brook to be replaced. And drainage improvements, as mentioned earlier, we have to correct that drainage problem there. We are also going to replace the HVAC units in the cafeteria. They're at the end of their useful life and they need to be replaced. And we have a geothermal heating and cooling system at Stony Brook Elementary School. And that system is now 20 years, more than 20 years old. Yeah. And we are seeing signs and indication that there may be some issues with the geothermal loop in the ground. And so a plan is to purchase a cooling tower, okay, that will be available for redundancy in the event that the geothermal system fails. Again, it's already showing issues with temperature changes and flow issues, and we want to be ready, okay? So geothermal wells do have a lifespan associated. And then last but not least, we have Tollgate Elementary School. Again, roof replacements in keeping with the same logic we discussed before. Exterior doors, the same. And then at Tollgate, we're going to widen the driveway, where the front driveway loop comes around the building, where you go into the back of the building. We're going to widen that area. We're also going to be building, as you know, in addition, a 6-room addition at Tollgate Elementary. We're going to remove the 2 modular classrooms that are there now. We're going to create more parking. We're going to widen the driveway. Why? Well, to be able to better get vehicles back there, cars, of course, create more maneuvering space because there's going to be actual parking there now, and also emergency vehicles, service vehicles, and delivery vehicles. It's not quite enough room to maneuver those vehicles through there. So we're going to improve that. Again, some HVAC system improvements. Tollgate has already had a lot of HVAC work done to it. There is the 3rd floor of the original building of Tollgate. We're going to replace the system that's in there with a heat pump system and energy recovery ventilation. That'll be much improved over what you have in there now, and will be in keeping really with what's been done in the other classrooms in the building as well. Okay, there is going to be the need to replace the electrical equipment in the building. The electrical equipment is obsolete. With the HVAC equipment that's being added and has been added, we need to replace the electrical switch gear there. It's very old and it needs to be replaced. And then, of course, we're doing that 6 classroom addition, and to get the kids out of the modulars, and of course to create again those pre-K and K spaces. Okay, appropriate pre-K and K spaces.
Just another note about Tollgate. One of the reasons that we're doing the 6 classroom addition is to bring those students in the modulars inside. But the other issue we need to address is that there's a lack of space inside Tollgate. While they won't be receiving, we're not expected to receive a lot of new students from the housing that's being built. There is some limitations on space, meeting space, and additional classroom spaces. We have some of our classes at Tollgate that go motion into classrooms. We want to be able to maintain our music program and our art program, and right now we're having a difficult time finding space for those. So this would give us to make sure that the program is run as designed.
Even things like staff toilet rooms, right? We're increasing staff toilet rooms, faculty room. Okay, we're providing that in a more centralized location where it's easier for the teachers to get to, and the bathrooms will, of course, be a nice enhancement to have. So we're doing that as well at Tollgate. So anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Duthie, for taking the time to walk us through those projects. We realize we're providing you with a lot of information tonight, but we also want to have the opportunity to hear from our town hall participants who are here in person as well as online. So as a reminder, in-person guests can come to the microphone. Online participants can submit a question with the Q&A feature of the Zoom webinar. So if anyone would like to approach the microphone at this point, we will take a few questions.
Good evening. My name is Robert. I have 2 kids that went through Bear Tavern. Actually, one of them is still there. I have a high school daughter who went through the high school a few years back. Thank you so much for the comprehensive sort of plan and everything. I think one of the questions that I have, I think, we moved to this district about 10 years ago. Having the trust in sort of the staff and everybody to kind of look and teach our kids. One of the things that I wanted to ask about is kind of this trust on how the money will be spent and the prioritization that goes through in spending this money. Specifically, I think I was talking, when I learned about this referendum, and then also saw that all these projects, like you guys had mentioned before, a lot of it has been, things that the district wanted to do. But at the same time, I found out that on one of the PDFs that was sent out, earlier in this year, back in May, that $887,000 was spent on AstroTurf, I think at the high school, where, potentially those budget, at least from an outside perspective, seems like there probably may be a better place to spend that money instead of the AstroTurf. I was just kind of wondering, the community, I know the community want to, at least for me, knowing that my kids will benefit from some of this money, but also wanted to see how this money is being, who's making the decision, why was the decision made around the AstroTurf versus, let's say, the HVAC or the roof or anything like that.
Thank you for your question. Mr. Calavita, Dr. Treese, would you like to entertain that question?
Yes, and you can feel free to jump in. So with the AstroTurf, the need was to replace the failing field that was already here. So it wasn't like the proposal at AFT where there is an AstroTurf now. It was already there. It was past the life. It was not regulation past the life. And it was causing injuries and damage and bad for not just the students to play on, and we could no longer allow the students to play on it, which is another piece, is that there were little pieces to it that was breaking down, and these little plastic beads were going into the environment. So it was something we had to do. When the AstroTurf and sort of the tennis court was just also rubber base, and the tracks, those things do have to be resurfaced and replaced at some point. So it was at a point where we, and Tom Quinn can talk about the repairs that his folks have been doing on it for years. We had it repaired multiple times, but it was just past the point where we could do that any longer, and it really had to be repaired. So this time when we went to replace it, we made sure we picked a greener product that wouldn't do that, and one with a longer life cycle, longer durability than what we had before.
Yeah,
Is there anything I left off there?
Yeah, so if I may,
Mhm.
it's not unusual. Many school districts have synthetic turf fields. They have an 8 to 10 year lifespan. They're heavily used, and they do wear out. And when they wear out excessively, they become not as safe, okay? Because you have testing that has to be done on turf fields. They do testing. It's called GMAX testing, which is friction, okay? Basically, and padding, and how safe that field is. And it gets to a point where that field gets so worn, it can no longer pass that GMAX testing. And so we have to replace, we have no choice. That field has to be replaced after 8 to 10 years. I think it was 10 years, right?
10
Yeah,
years.
it was 10 years. So actually Hopewell was able to get at the higher end of the life of a turf field. Some districts, they only last about 8 years. So that's a necessity, and it's not really something you can kick the can down the road. That unfortunately, that kind of needs to be done when that failure starts to occur.
And again, I think there was another part of the question that talked about who made that decision. As Dr. Treese mentioned, there are board members who are sitting in front of us. We run all major decisions through not only the full board, but we discuss things in great detail in our committee structure. And this replacement was brought before the board finance committee first, and then the full board in a discussion with our athletic director where we talked about the failing of the GMAX testing. It was at its final end. It wasn't going to pass. And stewards, the field was donated to us 11 years ago, 12 years ago now. And it was, part of our stewardship to replace the field with a field that we felt would be able to last the next 12 to 13 years. They're newer type fields, and they're expected to last longer. As George said, we see a great value to the community. The field is used pretty much every day by our phys ed classes who go out there. Our driver's ed program uses the field. All of our athletic teams, our marching band uses it. We even had a wrestling match out there at one point. But it is used, and not only that, but the community is out there using it for any time of competitions. Our graduation is held there. So it is a central focus of the high school, but also the community as well.
Thank you. Do we have another question, please?
Hi, yes. Thanks for the presentation. My name is Andres Renero. I have a first grade daughter at Bear Tavern. So my question is somewhat similar in the vein of the previous question about the artificial turf being proposed at the middle school. Has any consideration been given to making those field improvements using a natural collegiate grass system with like a sand sub-base drainage system to alleviate the stormwater concerns? My main concerns are, one, of course, as you guys just mentioned, the fact that these fields break down and end up releasing plastic particulates into the environment, which I think we're all coming to find is not such a great thing. In addition, there are these hard lifespans on these systems and these artificial fields that you put in place. That 10 years, 8 years down the line, you have another $800,000 cost to fix. Studies that I've looked at show that the natural grass fields, while cheaper upfront and also cheaper to maintain long term. So has any consideration been given by the district to not use artificial surfaces and instead make these improvements using more sustainable options? Thank you.
I mean, yes, but as we said, I believe earlier in the presentation, our ability to maintain turf with the usage that we get, we could have the best grown turf, but we don't have the ability to rest those fields. We have to use all of our fields in each season. We have countless numbers of kids at the high school. We have 3 levels of soccer, 3 levels of lacrosse. We have middle school kids who play. There's just not time to maintain the fields the way that they would be maintained, for example, at the Trenton Thunder Stadium or Citizens Bank Park. We just don't have that ability to keep the quality of the fields up. We run a grounds crew of 4 guys, and they're not turf management specialists. They do a great job with their skill sets, but they don't have that knowledge base to take care of a field. And in other ways, we are also limited by what's called integrated pest management, the amount of things we're allowed to do to a field. And I know you're talking organic, but we just don't have that expertise to do it. And when we've looked into it, the cost is, and Tom could talk more about that, but the cost is very high to do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, you keep natural turf is lots of places can do it, but they have the resources to do it. They have the ability to rest the fields to some extent. But in public schools, I can tell you because I've been doing public school design for 35 years, and I've done many athletic complexes, and it's the same in all school districts. There just are not resources or the ability to establish and maintain a natural turf field. It's extremely difficult to do, especially with the amount of usage they obtain. So,
and those fields are located at AFT, where we are on well water, so they're not irrigated. So when you get a very dry month of June and the field starts to deteriorate quickly from the dryness, we're not able to irrigate those fields.
Thank you for your question. We'll take one more question at the microphone, please.
Hello, Pete DiDonato here. My kids went through the district, so thank you guys for everything that you do. Really great. And I understand the referendum is something that is needed, no question about it. But I just had a couple tiny questions here. But one of them is, I know we currently have an ongoing bond from 2016, and I think it matures in 2032, if I'm not mistaken. I believe based on when we purchased or when we started that bond rating, we had a very high just an overall credit rating, right? So and that's going to segue into my next question, which is how long is this bond term going to be? Number one, what is the approximate rate that we can expect out of this bond? And then when is the next referendum going to come up? And I've talked to you guys about this before, but I look at things in my perspective as 10 or 15 years. And I know that the state mandates long-term planning to be 5 years because the state wants you to come back for more money. But what I already know is that this bond is right now going to cost us day one, 3%. Every single Hopewell Township, Pennington Borough, it's going to cost them 3% year one of an increase. So already we have whatever that tax levy is plus 3%. So if you start adding that over so many years, right now we're starting at 3%. Yes, next year will be a little bit lower because our overall taxes will be higher. So right now we're going to be, day one is a 3% increase in our taxes. So those are my big concerns as, Hopewell Township resident now of 13 years is, when's the next one due? And I think from what I can see, we're probably 6 years away from another $80 to $120 million referendum. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Calavita, did you want to address that?
Should we go to Danielle now?
Or Ms. Marino?
So Danielle, I'm going to flip it to you right now. We were going to get to this part later on, but I'll flip to Danielle now.
So this will be a 20-year bond issue that we're projected to do. And we used a rate of 4.25%, which is a conservative rate. So the numbers you're going to see about the tax impact are really the worst case scenario. And the numbers you'll see is what you'll pay on average for the average home in each town over the entire 20 years that the bonds are outstanding. So if you no longer live in the district, you will not pay towards the bond referendum. But those who are benefiting from the projects will continue to pay as they live in the district. Questions?
Okay. Did you have anything else to add? Shall we move along?
Our credit, if I remember correctly, our credit rating last time we did this was a AA. I don't think it was a AA plus because at the time we were going through that, there was a fiscal crisis going on at that point as well. If the referendum does pass, we will be going through an exhaustive credit process with our financial advisor and bond counsel, where we will be again rated by either Standard & Poor's or Moody's, whichever one we decide to go with at that time. But we have no reason to believe that our credit rating has fallen at all, given the current status of our financial statements at this point.
Yes, sorry. Yep, the credit rating is the AA, and the town, Hopewell Township, and that's the only one I know off the top of my head, is a AA plus. So that's a notch above where the school district is. So there's really no indication, because a lot of the rating does come from the underlying economics and demographics of each individual town that sends to the regional. There's no indication that the credit rating would change prior to the bonds being sold.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to the questions from the microphone in just a few moments. But in the interim, I want to read some of the questions that have been submitted throughout the planning process, as well as some that have been submitted live tonight on Zoom. And it looks like these questions, at least a few of them here, are best suited to Mr. Calavita and Mr. Duthie. Mr. Calavita, why is the district not allocating a portion of the capital reserve for the projects? What are your guidelines for using the reserve funds? What minimum do you plan to retain? What can you use it for? And whether these guidelines are just guidelines or are they set by law?
What's set by law with the capital reserve is how it can be used. The capital reserve can only be used to reduce debt service. And that's done during the annual budget process. And it can be used for capitals that are projects that are deemed eligible by the state. So, for example, we could not, without board member approval, use the capital reserve to fund the replacement of a turf field. It has to be things that are required to keep up with a thorough and efficient education. So over the years, we have tried to keep a balance in the capital reserve to address those projects that we find most critical. Our list of capital projects that we have in our 5-year plan that was mentioned by Mr. DiDonato, at this point in time right now is in excess of somewhere in the area of 75 million. Okay. The last referendum that we did, we had identified $60 million worth of projects and we did 35 $5 million worth of projects. So though we had $30 million worth of projects left over that over the last 8 years have escalated in cost, and we've added to that list. So, the number 8 million that we had, that was referenced in the papers is now actually down to 7 million because we've actually appropriated some of the capital reserve money this current year to do the fire alarm at Stony Brook. We used it to repair the sewer line over at Timberlane. And then we are planning on using more of it next summer for a boiler project that at the high school that we couldn't risk placing on this referendum in case it failed. So, we will have 7 million or so. I don't know that it's a hard and fast number. The state only allows you to keep monies in your capital reserve up to and including what is in your capital reserve, your capital plan. So you can't just put money there, and it can't be used. So it's got to be, the use of it is highly governed by the state and the Board of Education. I think at this point, with the amount of projects that we have, we have a sufficient amount, but it's not enough to do everything we need to do. That's why we're not putting any of it towards the referendum now, because we know that we have projects that need to be done. And if the community doesn't approve what we're trying to do with this referendum, we're going to need to tap into more of that. What's more is that the only way to get money into the capital reserve is to budget it. And if we were to budget a deposit of money into the capital reserve, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from program. It's going to come from what we do in our regular budget. That's one way of getting it in there. And the other way is savings. So if we have a good year, our heating bills are low, we don't have.
Healthcare is low, transportation costs and gas are low, which we know that hasn't been, right, for some time.
So that's what we've been able to do, is we've been able to take monies that were unspent due to fiscal responsibility and put that towards our future. Right. And we're also, George mentioned that we're also capped. Our budget can only increase by 2% each year. And if you're, aware of what's going on in the country right now, in the world, our bus routes are increasing at 8%, 5%. Our tuitions are increasing by 10%. Energy costs are skyrocketing, health benefit costs are skyrocketing. Everything is going up greater than that 2% rate. So, in addition to construction costs that are escalating. So to have a capital reserve of 7 million, to me, that's, I don't know that I would feel comfortable going lower than that.
Okay, thank you. We've received a number of questions regarding, and I think this is for Mr. Duthie, and Mr. Calavita might want to join in, regarding, is it possible to share an itemized list of project costs for the referendum?
We did that, didn't we? We shared. So there is an itemized list out there. It was shared in November and February when we first started to do this, and those presentations. I'm not sure when they're speaking of an itemized list, I'm not sure we don't have a price of every item that's going to be, or every piece of every item that's gone down. We have gone through the initial drawing process. We have not gone through the detail that would be required if the referendum passes, and we're actually going to submit shop drawings and things like that to the Department of Community Affairs. Actually, it's our local folks to review that for actual construction. We haven't expended those dollars yet because, we haven't gotten permission from the community to move ahead. There's also a public bid process that we need to go through. So if we were to list out each and every, this is what we expect to pay for doors, and this is what we expect to pay for a roof. It kind of goes against us in the bid process. So what we've tried to do is kind of give an overview of the items that we're looking at doing in a general framework. And as we get further into the process, we'll have more details available.
So what Mr. Calavita means by that is, like, for example, if you were going to a car dealership to buy a car, you're not going to tell the dealer what you plan on spending, the salesperson, right? I know that I can spend up to here. So we don't put out those itemized lists until, we have an idea of what we want to spend internally. That's not something we post. And then we go down that process. Now, I think there was also some questions that tied into this about sort of how do we pick the contractor who supervises that. We have managers that manage these projects. Mr. Quinn works very closely with those project managers. But as a school district, we don't get to just pick whoever we want to do a construction project. We put out the specs, vendors go to bid, and we have to take the lowest bid, have to. We don't get to say, well, we would like to take in the middle, or we'd like to take this more expensive. We have to go with low bid.
And to go a little bit further with that, we did do a competitive process to secure what is known in the state of New Jersey as a construction manager. Any project over $2 million. It's two, right? It's two? Two, I think it's two. A project over $2 million, you're required to have an independent construction manager to oversee the work of the contractor. So we went through a formal bid process with we did get bids from about 5 companies, and we have secured the services of a company called New Road Construction that will be the overseer on the construction. They will work in tandem with me and Tom Quinn, as well as our design professionals, to construct detailed specifications and also review the bids of the general contractors that will be hopefully bidding on our projects.
Okay, thank you. And then we've also had a number of questions regarding roofing replacements. And Mr. Duthie, perhaps you can address that one for us, please.
What are the questions?
What is the need? What is the overriding need for roofing replacements at this point?
Well, as I explained earlier, there's several criteria for replacement of a roof, okay? First of all, the most immediate is the roof demonstrating signs of an imminent failure? And that doesn't mean it's failed already, but could it fail? And by the way, there is a due diligence process. All the roofs are surveyed. We've had the manufacturer's representatives out. So, do we have active leaks in that roof? And do we have signs of imminent failure? Those 2 items are the highest priority for replacement of the roof. What's the other one? Warranty. When will that roof warranty expire? We take a look at the roof warranty, but we also take a look at the condition of the roof. 2 things happen when we look at the condition of the roof. Will that roof be replaced all the way down to the deck? A full roof replacement? That depends on factors such as, is the existing roof wet all the way down to the deck? Has the roof system failed to the point where we can't use a different type of system to do another roof system, perhaps over the top, or a roof recovery system? Okay, so those factors all are taken into consideration when we look at our roofs. Then they're prioritized, okay, based upon the criteria I just described, as well as opportunities for funding like you have right now with the state and the referendum, which it is an eligible project, so roofing is paid for, and availability of the various types of systems that we can choose to place down onto the roof. So it is a due diligence process. And that is why in 2016, in the referendum, certain roofs were selected based on that criteria. And that is why in this referendum, other roofs are being selected. And those are shown on the roof maps. We have roof maps for every single roof. They're aware of the condition of all the roofs. They've all been surveyed. We've identified the warranties, the manufacturers, and we have a great deal of information about all the roofs and their conditions. And that's what drives the decision-making about the roofing.
And we don't always replace a roof when we get to the end of warranty. There are times where George and Tom have recommended to me that instead of replacing the roof at this time, we're going to do a warranty extension process where we don't replace the roof, but we do some work on it that extends out the life of that roof 5, 10 years until we actually have to do a replacement based upon budgeted funds. If we don't have the money to replace an entire roof, we do what we can to extend out the useful life. When opportunities like this come across where we can get a large number of roofs done at the same time and get state funding for it, it's a trigger for us. Maybe this is the way we need to go.
Okay, thank you very much. As promised, we're going to go back to the microphone, take another question.
Good evening. My name is Judy Abbott Niederer. I'm a lifelong resident of Hopewell Township. And the fourth generation of my family attends Bear Tavern right now. So I do have some questions, but I want to say thank you first off for having this forum so that we have an opportunity to ask these questions. The revenue at the concession stands at the high school, who is making the revenue and where does it go to? I can ask a series of questions, okay? And has that money, if it's going to the booster clubs, have they been asked to give back some towards the concession stand? One of my questions about Central High School was already answered. Are we still paying down the previous referendum that brought the existing improvements to CHS? And that's yes. The question at Timberlane was how much would the turf fields cost? If you're unable to answer that because it's an itemized cost, I understand that. But I want to know, are they multi-purpose fields and how many different sports teams will be able to use them?
So-
The other question I have is on my sample ballot. The total of the bond referendum is $87 million. And it talks about all of the costs at the bottom, at all of the different schools. If you add up all of those costs at the bottom of that referendum, it's $65 million. So there's a difference of $21.5 million in that question. I wonder what that $21.5 million is for.
65 million is the only- 65.
At Bear Tavern School, the replacement for the addition of the 10 classrooms, again, we're not really sure what that is. But I would like to know what the highest number of students that there were at Bear Tavern at its peak. The current enrollment is 452. So I would like to know what the highest number of students were at Bear Tavern at one time. Lastly, I'm going to ask a series of questions that don't need to be answered. Are you able to think outside the box? Are you aware that there is a highly functional school on River Drive in Titusville that used to belong to the Hopewell Valley Regional School Districts? In the peaks and valleys of enrollment in this district, we were at capacity in the mid-1970s where we were on the verge of split sessions. And the school was half of this size. And we probably had around 1,300 students in the school. And then we went down into a valley of $1 million. If the owner of this facility were to retire and offer this building for sale, would you be interested in buying this facility and putting it back into service? It's ADA accessible. Or would you be interested in approaching the owner to see if and when they would retire and get this school back? Think of all of the students that live in Titusville, Washington Crossing, all the way up to Pleasant Valley that would be able to utilize this community school. And there's at least 10 classrooms in that school.
Ms. Nieder, I don't mean to be rude, but
I'm done.
we're respect. Okay, thank you so
That's
much.
the last of my questions.
Thank you.
So thank you.
So I'll cover the concession stands. When the boosters and any of the folks that come in do sales here, yes, they do support our students. They buy equipment, they buy uniforms sometimes, they do, that money does come back to our students and they support our students at all times. The turf field, there was a lot that came out. There was the question, the cost of the turf field. We do have a cost.
So
for turf
yeah,
field.
the cost of the
Mm.
turf field, the projected cost is around $5.8 million, of which 1 point, and I should have brought glasses, but $1.6 million will be covered by the state.
And that's for the two fields?
It's yes,
And
but the
it-
whole complex is about 5.8 million, of which 1.6 will be covered by the state.
And what sports are played on that?
So it can pretty much be used for anything. So we will definitely have, it'll be lined for baseball and softball. It'll be lined for football, field hockey, lacrosse, soccer. The band will be using it. So the beauty of that location, and it will be used for sub-varsity games for the most part. The varsity games will be held at the main site on campus, but what will it do? It will now allow other folks to use it while the main field is being utilized. So the band can get on it. The band can practice while football practice is going on. You could have soccer practice and field hockey practice simultaneously. You could have any number of other teams. You could go sideways. It's similar to what Lawrence has on their field. It's really a multi-purpose space that can be used for any of the sports that we have to be played on.
So the highest number at Bear Tavern, do you recall?
Well, how many students can the new addition handle at Bear Tavern?
No, but she means back in
Highest
the
number
day.
in the past.
How many students were at their peak?
I don't.
Yeah, we'd have to
I've
dig
been
into that.
told in the past, similar to what you said, the most I've ever heard at Bear Tavern was over 800.
Right. So
But that was in the period of time before Stony Brook was built.
right. So the difference with that though, is we had half-day kindergarten, right? So you get half the kids come in, half go out. Now they're all there at the same time. We didn't offer preschool like we offer. We did not have multiply disabled classes like we do. We didn't have STEM labs. We used the space quite differently than we used then. The component
Education is what guides our classroom sizes for special education. And I'm definitely a rule follower. So for an autism class, we cannot exceed 6 children in a classroom. 6 is max. So if we get a 7th and they need a program, we have to, again, figure out what to do and how to program accordingly. Preschool's the same. We have to keep them between 8 and we typically don't go beyond 15. And resource room classes cannot exceed 9 students.
And I'm assuming they give you the size of the classroom also, not in
Yes,
students.
and also bathrooms for all of our preschools.
And in addition, the class sizes, when it was 800, were not 18 to 20. They were well into over 30.
I know, I attended 32 in my class.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Agree.
We'll take, oh, did you have anything else to add?
No.
No? Okay, we'll take another question at the
Yes.
microphone, please.
Hi, my name is Tom. I'm a 3-year resident of Hopewell Township. I have 2 kids in Tollgate. Number one, I noticed you did not answer her question of what is the other $21 million going for?
No,
Yes,
Right,
thank
right.
you.
And to ask another question about the money. And maybe I'm mistaken here and you can correct my math. But as far as I can tell, the population, if it's $500 a year in increased taxes, the population of Hopewell Township, Hopewell Borough and Pennington Borough is what, like 22,000. So that's like $11 million a year, if my math is correct. So instead of paying, well, I thought, hey, $87 million, we're gonna pay that off in like what, 10 years or something. And and we'll get $20 million back from the state, like that's a bargain. But if we're paying this for 20 years, like really, like that's $220 million, if my math is correct. So if we're borrowing 87 and paying back 220, really, where is the money going?
Thank you. Ms. Marino, Mr. Calavita, who wants to take
The
that one?
first, I think, first is it's based on households. Like tax-paying households, not population.
Okay,
And
that's my
there's
fault.
obviously going to be interest involved in the money that we're going to be paying back. The question regarding, and I'm going to kick this probably to Danielle in a minute, but the ballot is, and we had questions about the ballot even from our board members. The ballot is a legal document and the language in the ballot is governed by the state. So the $87.1 million is the amount of projects that we're going to be doing. The other number has to do with the
the projects that are eligible, and that's about 25% of the total bond amount that we're projecting to be issuing here. So that's where that 60 some odd million number comes in. So part of the projects are ineligible for state aid, but the renovation projects and such, which is the majority of the bond referendum, are eligible. And we're all paying into the state fund that helps to fund the debt service aid. So that's where that number comes from.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more question from the microphone, please.
Kate Ham. First, I want to thank everybody for attending tonight, those who are here in person, those watching virtually. I'm glad to know this format works so that maybe at future board meetings, this could be utilized. It's no secret that the community is talking about this referendum. There are a few items in there that many attribute to be luxuries. So my question for you is kind of multi-tiered, is that if there on September 17th is a negative decision in which the referendum does not pass, does the district currently have a plan B in its back pocket that they're going to pull out if and when the referendum does not pass? If this needs to go back to the board, the administrators, to come up with a new proposed referendum, what is the time frame of that? How soon can that be done? And will we then be stipulated to another $75,000 for a special election?
Thank you for your question. Who would like to address that one?
That's a great question. Can't really speak for what the board would do. Well, obviously, we would have to go back and take a look at the individual projects that were submitted to the state to determine if in fact, there would be a reduction in the number of projects that would be included in another referendum that would follow. However, by law, there are only 5 dates a year when referenda can be conducted. The one that follows September is actually November, then December, then January, then March, then not again until September. So you would have to make your decisions. You would have to cull out whatever projects need to be culled out. And by the way, projects have to be, in order to reconstruct a referendum, projects have to be picked out based on the way the applications were submitted to the Department of Education. You can't take, for example, if Bear Tavern has its roof and its doors and its storefronts and everything in one application to the Department of Education, we can't break those projects away from that application without resubmitting to the Department of Education for reapproval. That takes a minimum of 90 days to get the State Department of Education to review the project. And that's depending on how busy they are. By statute, it's 90 days. It can take longer. So you would have to first regroup to determine what projects, would you keep the projects in the form that they were submitted to the state and just pull out individual project applications, okay? And then go out for referendum again? Or would you break down by school even further, which will require resubmission to the state? Then you're well into next year, probably beyond March until like even maybe next September to do another referendum. What happens in that intervening period of time? Construction costs go up again, okay? We don't know what interest rates are going to do. There's a lot of uncertainty associated with that approach. Second approach, you just take a couple of projects away after the board consults and go back out for referendum again with the form of the projects the way they are now, less however many you would take out that are full applications, okay? So that really is kind of the timing and decision-making that would have to be done. And depending on how that's handled would determine on when you would go out for a referendum again, okay? So, yeah.
All right, and in the meantime, we're continuing to sort of kick the can down the road, right? We started with the referendum. The last one we did that started out at 60 and then we kind of picked apart and kicked the can and decided, no, we don't have the temperature for that. And those projects are now much, much, much worse. In addition to the other things that are coming, that we need to fix. So the plan B is to continue doing what we have been doing, which is not working for the district. And we may face other catastrophic failures like the one, we are gonna have those. So yes, we can go back and do that. Now we're 2 years out from construction. If we don't get to the same place and we decide, oh no, we're not gonna do it again, and then everything is more expensive. Failures come with more damage than just the system failing. Usually there's damage that comes to the space beyond just whatever that system was that failed, right? So you're paying 3 or 4 times for something if we had just fixed it properly. And we've played that game in this district for quite some time. And it's at a point where the board and this team of very, very talented folks have grappled and worked hard to say, these are the projects that we think we must do to support this district in the way it needs to be supported. And we're offering you our best advice. After that, I'm going to continue to do the best job that I can, regardless of your decision. But I think you'd be ill-advised to do that wait and see again and kind of see if we can get the right mixture of what everybody thinks is gonna be what they want, because we're gonna end up in a much worse position if we wait another year or two.
So thanks for answering that question. I think the majority of the community here is in line with the HVAC, the safety and security, the roofing, all of those projects. There's one, maybe two, that I think if removed from the referendum would allow the referendum to then pass, because there are luxuries that a lot of the community does not agree with.
Thank you, Ms. Ham. So it seems like,
So can I just need to say, it's not an option to pull those off at this point. This is the package we're offering you. And I don't think that the safety of our students being off-site somewhere is a luxury. That's my feeling of it as the superintendent. With what I'm seeing on the news and what I have to try to circle the wagons around, to me, it's not a luxury.
And again, I, to add to it, and I'm looking at my finance committee below. This was not undertaken lightly. This was months of discussion over whether we should or whether we shouldn't. And again, for me, as the business administrator and knowing the risk as a risk manager, having our students off-site, it's to me was difficult to take, understanding that, my daughter attended school here and played field hockey over at Twin Pines and broke her hand over at Twin Pines and had to wait to get herself to see a trainer and to the doctor. And that was concerning to me. My son also attended here and played baseball over at the municipal complex. So again, knowing that kids can get hurt and not having access to care. There were storms that happened, lightning storms that happened. Well, those kids, there's no cover
Out there,
at Twin
no
Pines.
cover.
Bringing our students, if we're going to continue to maintain the programs, the athletic programs and the band programs that we are running, then again, discussing with the committee, these were tantamount and we didn't consider them luxuries, in that realm.
okay, thank you very much. So at this juncture, we're going to put the questions on pause for a moment and turn our attention to some other important topics such as logistics and finances. All these investments at the schools add up to a proposed $87.2 million investment to restore, improve, and expand our facilities, as you have heard. As a former school board member, I have some background knowledge about the value of state aid in this process. But it's really important that the voters understand that advantage as well. And so for that, I'd like to turn to Mr. Colavito and Ms. Marino, Mr. Colavito, Ms. Marino, who could share information about the estimated tax impact, how to find your assessed value, and the advantage of state aid.
Sure. We've hit a lot of this already, so we're going to just try to get through it so we can get back to some more of your questions if there are any. As Ms. Linthorpe said, the total amount of projects in this referendum is 87 million. The number that we want folks to focus on is that the state will be contributing $20.3 million towards the cost of this project. Unfortunately, the state doesn't give you that money up front. Right? We must bond it first, and the money will come to us in annual payments at budget time each year for the life of the loan. Okay, so if it's a 20-year loan, they pay us for 20 years. It's a 15-year loan. We would get it over that period of time. The average impact based upon the average home in the three municipalities ranges roughly around $500,000. If you have a house that's valued, you're locally assessed at around $500,000, your tax impact would be $433 to $515, depending on which borough you're in, and that's at this given time. Okay, again, $20.3 million. I'll kick it to Danielle to see if there's anything else about how that number was arrived at. I think she talked a little bit about it. If she wants to add a little to that, maybe the next one.
Sure. So what's taken into account to get to the tax impact for each town is the assessed value of your town, the average home value in your town, and also because you're a regional school district, the percent that each town pays into the regional for outstanding debt. And with that being said, Hopewell Borough will pay approximately $433 per year for the entire 20-year life of the bond issue. Hopewell Township will pay $507, and Pennington Borough will pay $515. And something I sort of alluded to earlier is that, you know, this is a 20-year issue because there is a 20-year useful life of all these projects. If the district pays out of the budget for a project during the year, then you're paying for that full project for that 1 year. But if they are able to finance it over 20 years, whoever lives within the town over that 20 years receives the benefit of this project. And if you decide to leave the township or any of the towns that send to the regional, you will no longer pay towards that project. So you can either pay for it upfront through the budget, or in this case, with the referendum, you pay for the projects over a 20-year period.
And that was a key comment that Danielle made. We can't bond money longer than the useful life of the projects. And because of the large size of this particular referendum, I've discussed with Danielle and her firm that we probably would be bonding money in periods of time as the money becomes necessary, in the hopes that interest rates will indeed fall during that time. So we would bond only the monies that we need for a given number of projects, monitoring the market, going back out to bond further monies as required.
Yeah, if I could just jump in on the interest rates. You know, this is different than your mortgage rate. This is a tax exempt bond rate. So you're getting the benefit from the tax exemption. Investors provide a lower interest rate because of that, and also because of how safe the investment is. Municipal bonds are considered an incredibly safe investment. So you're not paying the same rate you would for a mortgage. And that's important. And another important part of where we are with interest rates in the municipal bond market is that we're at more historically average rates over the past 20 years. We're not in a higher interest rate environment at this current period. And, you know, the expectation is that rates will likely come down. I mean, we can't guarantee anything, but we certainly monitor the market and help the district make the best decision as to when the bonds should be issued.
And I know it came up earlier about that we do still have current debt from our 2016 bond. At a period of time, those bonds will be what's called callable, and we'll be able to refinance them to lower the amount we're paying out each year as that happens. So, you know, unfortunately, we did bond, when we bonded that money, it was at an exceptionally low rate. So I'm not sure what the opportunities exist for us to refinance at this time. But we did benefit at that time with extremely favorable rates.
Yeah, and this bond series, once it's issued, will have a similar type of what's called a call feature. And in about 7 years, if the minimum savings threshold is met, we certainly would refinance these bonds as well to decrease the overall debt service that you're all paying into.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all that information. Also wanted to remind everyone that, again, this session is being recorded. So if you need to break away at any point, you can always go back and watch it on the referendum website. And again, that site is hvrsd.org/vote. We will while we have the chance, we're going to answer some questions that we're getting from the online audience that are finance related. The first of those being, why do the projects in this referendum cost so much more than those in the last referendum? Mr. Calavita, can you take that one?
I don't know.
Well,
Judge.
I'll try to take a go at that one. Construction costs have more than doubled. That's the reason why. More, and depending on the trade or the type of equipment or the type of project, it could be even more than that. And although, you know, everybody has a tendency to want to blame the pandemic, the reality is that there were a lot of economic construction marketplace factors that were actually beginning to rear their ugly heads even before the pandemic, and the pandemic just aggravated the situation. So we're seeing, and there's a lot of things with, you know, there's tariffs and there's we had the container ship shortages, right now chip shortages, that's a big one. There are a lot of things in construction marketplace right now that cause prices to go up very, very far,
And-
okay?
And
Yeah.
still very long lead
Yeah.
times
I
on
mean,
so many
look,
others, like
you go in-
switchgear, for
Yeah.
instance.
Oh, yeah. You go in the grocery store, right, folks? I mean, listen, how much have groceries gone up, right? But you know, something that used to be 79 cents costs 2.50 now. So it's just the sign of the times. Is it going to get better? No, probably not. Not according to all of the economists. They're saying that it's probably, in fact, we're only seeing really, you know, we're going to see more inflation in construction. And there's a lot of things that affect that. So when we did the high school, I was amazed. I went back, I looked, you know, when we built the addition on the high school, we built two additions on high school. We did a bunch of HVAC work, a whole bunch of renovations at the high school back, what, Bob, in 2017, 18? Yeah, from the 2016 referendum for $16 million. So, I mean,
I
it's-
believe the
it's
cost of
crazy.
Stony Brook, the cost to construct Stony Brook new was $13 million. And
Just a brand new Stony Brook school.
that
Right.
was in 2000, and yeah,
Back-
2001.
Back then, construction costs, you know, we did schools all the time for $200, $250 a square foot, you know, and now new construction's pushing 700. So, and then on top of that, you have to add soft cost, you know, so it's real. These numbers are real and we're seeing them. I open bids every week. And I'm seeing the inflated prices and it's hard to explain to people. It really is, but that is the reality. That is the climate we're living in right now.
Which is key to why we're going out in September. When we may be able to go out to bid in, you know, early in the new year, if this should pass, it's going out early in the new year without competition.
Yeah. Right.
You know, are they gonna bid on our job? Or are they gonna bid on somebody else's job?
Yeah, we're trying to.
Watching as you're watching the newspapers, the sister districts around us are going out for a larger referendum. So,
Right.
you know, us getting out sooner than later is going to help.
Yep, true.
Because that's going to make it more competitive for us.
Right.
And drive up costs.
That's a great point. The more projects are out there competing for the limited amount of materials and labor are available, it's just going to help drive prices up even further.
And those prices aren't just on new construction, but they're on what we're trying to maintain on an annual basis. Everything has doubled.
Okay, thank you very much. Another online audience question. They would like to know, is the 4.25% an achievable rate with the federal bank interest rates at 5.5%? What impact would a higher bond rate have on our taxes? Danielle?
I can talk to that. So 4.25 is a conservative rate. Bonds of a similar term, similar credit rating, similar size are selling for approximately a 3.75. So we're about 50 basis points or 0.5% higher in our projections. I didn't run the exact sensitivity analysis, but every 25 basis points or a quarter point typically results in a $5 to $10 increase or decrease, depending on which way the interest rates move. So currently we're about 50 basis points in the current market through the projection. So, you know, the expectation at this point is that you'll be somewhere between $10 and $20 better than what you're seeing on the screen for the 400 and some odd number to the 500 number per average home. you know, and just to speak to what's in the news, the Fed's meeting next week. The expectation is that they're going to cut the rate. That is an overnight rate. We're talking about the long-term rate here. So it's not apples to apples, but yeah, if anything, the expectation is that rates will come down even further than where they're at currently.
Okay, thank you very much. We're trying to be mindful of time, and we would like to allow 3 more questions at the microphone, and then we'll probably wrap things up after that. Do we have questions from the audience here in person?
Hi, Sylvia Kosas, and I guess my question is, there's, I think, 49 days between the referendum vote and the general election. And I know you've said that this bidding process is very intense and that you need to get out sooner. But I just have 2 concerns, well, 3 actually, that the taxpayer is paying for the cost of this special election. We know that the previous bond election was $30,000. This one could be 75,000 to maybe more. Secondly, it's really disenfranchising some voters. The possibility is there because there's no early in-person voting. So normally those that would vote those 9 days, which they can do in November, they can vote at night. They're not going to be able to vote as they were. And there's also just 1 polling location. So that means that people from Hopewell Borough and the township and in Pennington have to all come to the firehouse. So I think my concern is just voter disenfranchisement for 49 days. And I just would like to have more of an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to address that on the panel? Dr. Treese?
Yes,
Or Mr.
did also
Conley.
tag team with me as
Yep.
well. We did look at multiple voter, we talked about the reason for September. But we also looked at the locations for voting, and it was, you know, having one the size that we needed and not to have confusion to people. It would have been maybe the board office, which has limited parking, and then having the 1 location. And we did go out and visit the site where we can have everyone report, as not to confuse people to go to multiple places. With to also keep costs down to the district, we kept it to just the bare minimum of what we would need to do to put out the vote, knowing that we could have mail-in as well. But it was, again, to keep the costs down, but also hoping to recoup whatever costs we put out to run this early special election and the savings we will get with what we can gain going out to bid early. Is there anything else you'd like to
No,
add?
I think that the main reason is, and we understand that there is a cost to the taxpayer to do a special vote in September. We are at the advice of our, you know, our design professionals and the severity of the work that needs to be done. We wanted to make sure that we could get out and start construction in summer 2025. If we waited till November, we would not be constructing anything in the summer of 2025. As far as, again, we had originally thought that we were going to run all the same polling locations as the regular general election. At the guidance of the Mercer County Board of Elections, who met with Dr. Treese and I
Yes.
at the Pennington Firehouse, said that they, at their recommendation, recommended a central location for this type of special election, that everybody knew that they would all go
To
to
one
the same
place.
general place. And they would be able to staff that effectively for us. So
Mhm.
a combination of things, tantamount among, we want to get out to construct in the summer of 2025. It is critical for the systems that we are going to be replacing, the roofing work, the HVAC work. We want to get out ahead of this. The construction, obviously the construction on the additions at Bear Tavern and Tollgate will not be ready for this summer, but the projects such as HVAC and roofing, we know that we can get bids, specs and bids out on the street to construct in summer
In the
2025.
summer and have them done.
Thank you. We'll take another question, please, at the microphone.
Hi, thanks for having this session. I have several questions, but I'll try to make them quick. Why, after 10 years of steady decrease in enrollment, 7% decrease in enrollment, are now we having a problem with not enough fields? 20 years ago, they tore out 32 acres of a wooded forest to make these fields, and they put extra in there because they said the fields had to rest. And then they said, oh, we didn't have enough water to irrigate the fields. So they put green towers up throughout the district area there, back Timber Lane, to water the fields, to try to maintain them, which as a homeowner near the fields, we were concerned for our wells. But that went through. Now, when we're trying to preach, let's take care of Mother Earth and environmental, we're going to tear up natural grass and put in artificial turf where students have a tendency to get hurt faster because it's a harder surface, it's a faster play. And I'm sorry about your daughter's hand, but you have more of a tendency to have injuries on artificial turf, not natural grass. Why are we using the football field for driver's ed? I was a little confused on that one when you mentioned that. Why was A1 limousine service, those buses dropping off the kids? Why don't we use the school buses anymore? I'm looking for ways to save money, to decrease our costs. And finally, is it a common practice to have backup wells? And how are those wells maintained? And actually, where is the multi-field going to be? Will there be a fence around them? Are you going to have restrooms there? I'm sorry, I just have a series of questions.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
in the interest of time, thank you. We'll move along.
So I'll start and I'm sure Mr. Calavita will hop in. The fields already exist, so the AFT fields that are already there, and those are the fields that we're looking to put turf on. They already exist. We're not adding new fields, so to speak. The question about the backup wells. The reason for a backup well is because we have two schools still on a well. One's Timber Lane, the other's Bear Tavern. When Timber Lane's well failed here last year, there was no water in the building, meaning I would have had to shut down school, send all the kids home, and they would not have returned to school until I could fix the well and bring water back to the school. A backup system would stop that from happening. The one well would fail. We would get the signal for that, and then that would take over while the other well could be repaired. We don't have that sort of system in either building. So if the one well, the pump, the one system there fails, it's done. And so that's why after that situation, we decided to add the backup pumps. Could you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about that. It would be done under a lead lag system. So one of the pumps would run for a month, and then the following month, the other pump runs. That way, nothing's ever sitting idle. You're never using two at the same time. It's merely as a backup. And we discovered when the Timber Lane well failed, how hard that stuff is to get. We happened to just find one on a shelf. Otherwise, it was going to be 3 to 6 weeks to get one of those pumps. It's not like a pump in your household well. This is 253 feet down, and the amount of gallons that it has to produce, they're just not sitting around. We got very, very lucky.
She was asking about the busing system. Why can't we use our own buses to transport kids? And
So a lot of the transportation regarding athletics happens as school is letting out. They're going to their athletic contests at 2:45, 3 o'clock, when our buses are taking home the high school, middle school kids and then turning back around to pick up the elementary school kids. The reason why they're using A1 limousine buses now is because that's who won the bid. We went out for a public bid, and we were very fortunate. Many schools in our area now can't get bids for that. They were actually, believe it or not, the lowest bid. The other school bus standardized, garden variety school bus companies didn't bid. They don't have the extra buses right now. There's a nationwide school bus driver shortage. And we were very fortunate to be able to get that company to transport our kids and give us a guaranteed number of buses each day.
and where we're transporting them to is a turf field. So they're playing on a turf field, just not here, on our campuses where we can ensure that they're here. and safe. And we have our administration here and our CSOs here and our trainers here and our nurses here. We're sending them to someone else's turf field.
Yeah, I think at the current time, every school district in Mercer County has at least one. Obviously Hamilton has 3, Ewing has 1, Lawrence has 2. It's just, it's a way that has been found in athletics to move to these types of fields for convenience and safety purposes. It's just, it allows our kids to get on, more kids to get on, playing time than trying to keep our fields, up.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take one last question from the microphone and then we'll wrap things up.
Hello, my name is Stuart Warren. I've lived here in Pennington Borough for 42 years and raised 2 children here. It seems to me that most of the controversy, I'd say 90% of it, from what I've heard and read, is with respect to these turf fields. The first question is there any reason why we couldn't have vote on 2 separate topics? One for the maintenance of the buildings, which no one is contesting. If you need a new roof, you need a new roof and it's got to get done. The big question is with these turf fields, and could this be separated into 2 parts? So there could be a vote on one, which would settle that issue, and then the vote on the second one, the turf fields, which is the most controversial. That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question, which I still find very hard to figure out, I'm an old timer. I went to high school back in the 60s. The sports teams played on grass fields. Now, you might say, okay, for a high school, we want to have the kids be able to compete and be used to the same type of field. And whether their team does well may influence kids getting scholarships and that kind of thing. But for a junior high school, I can't figure out why we need a turf field. And then the other part of that is, what's it really going to cost? You're talking 5-point-something million now. You're talking, from what I understand, is in this projected budget, something like 800,000 to repair or redo the turf field at the high school, which presumably Timberlane would need in another number of years. And then you have the interest rate on the bonds on that 5 million. So is that 5 million going to eventually cost us 8 million, 9 million? What would it be? And I think that's a relevant number for the voters to consider when they decide whether or not they can really support this whole idea of the turf fields. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Colavita, anyone else on the panel care to take that one?
Sure. It's, there will be a cost to replace the turf, 13, 14 years down the line. There are different ways to finance a replacement. This replacement that we just did, the 800,000 that we did 2 summers ago, we saved for it. I set money aside every year for 10 years, anticipating that would have to be replaced. Similar planning would go along to replacing this field, should it be built 10 or 15 years down the road. Again, it's not about giving the kids a turf field to play on because it's cool to do that or whatever. It's about getting our kids on playing surfaces that are safe and can be used right after the other. You've got any number of different events. If you have ever seen a football field, a grass football field, by the middle of September, the field is, if you have soccer players using the same field, the field's destroyed. The middle of the field is destroyed. In our soccer, when we had soccer being played at the AFT fields and on our varsity field, when it was at the high school, the goal mouths are destroyed. So that when you try to regrow it and then try to play another sport on it, it just doesn't happen. The field doesn't regenerate itself. The amount of kids that we have participating in activities, I said earlier, we have 3 levels of sports going on in almost every one of our teams. We have a freshman level, a JV level, and a varsity level. And we have many different levels at the middle school that also are using those fields. Our band is on those fields. We have weekend folks utilizing those fields. So the sheer wear and tear makes it near impossible for us to maintain the fields at a safe level. I mean, there are the fields at those kinds of fields are prone to divots, the ruts, and growing a good stand of grass. That was mentioned before. We did put water tanks up, but we've tried to be good neighbors to the residents who live there, and we use the water on an extremely limited basis. Most of the water is used at the baseball field to keep the infield wet and the infield grass green. So they can play on it safely again, but to water the fields out at AFT, it takes an incredible amount of water to be useful. Otherwise, if you're just simply surface watering a field, you do more damage than good. And that's why we haven't used those tanks forward. It's become increasingly difficult to maintain safe playing areas just because it looks green from a distance. Up close there, we have over the years found issues with that, and the athletic directors pointed that out to us.
Yeah, I think with the natural turf fields, without irrigation, that's difficult. They're difficult to maintain. And you really would, the number of people drawing from the same aquifer in that area, you would need permits from the DEP, water resources, to even drill wells for irrigation. And I doubt we would get approval from the DEP for that much water to be drawn from that aquifer.
In fact, we asked, and
Yeah,
they told us that there's no way they would
There's a
ever approve it.
moratorium on
Yeah.
those. So that is another challenge with using those natural turf fields.
Well, as it
is
should be,
irrigation.
because we know there's water shortages, right?
Yeah, of
So
course. Yeah.
it's to create something, and then you're gonna probably rip up anyway. Because what's changed since, I was a student athlete, is the seasons were much shorter. It was over, and then the next season started, and you didn't have multiple seasons. You didn't have seasons that went on year long that overlapped. The use of fields now compared to when we were kids, and my kids were even kids, you can't come out here and they're not all happening. And these fields aren't really Timberlane's fields, they're behind there. So it's really not a middle school field. It's a field that the high school and the middle school would probably be using. We offer extensive sports at middle schools that a lot of school districts don't do. So the number of sports that we run as a district, let alone what's happening in the community and them wanting to access our fields is a lot more than it used to be.
I did forget, there was one question about why driver's ed was on the turf. It's because they can set up a course. They set up, it's used for drunk driving simulation. The kids wear special goggles and they set up a course on the turf that we would rather not have them doing in the parking lot around
cars.
all the cars.
On golf course.
Yeah, in golf carts, so not driving.
They're not
in our
driving.
fields.
Yes.
So, all right, thanks.
Thanks, because I know she probably saw people driving on there. But I didn't think about that. Said it.
Thank you, panelists. So we are now at the 9 o'clock hour. I just want to take a few moments to share the voting information with you. So as we wrap up, the county must receive your vote by mail application by September 10th, tomorrow, in order to mail you a ballot. The county must receive your vote by mail application by 3 p.m. on September 16th in order to give you a ballot in person. And on September 17th, as we've mentioned, polls will be open 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. At the Pennington Fire Company, 120 Brommel Place. We've shared a lot of information here. We covered a lot of questions, both in our pack here as well as online, and we hope this was a helpful session for you. However, if your questions were not answered, you are encouraged to email them. The email address that you can send those questions to is vote@hvrsd.org. That's vote@hvrsd.org. We will get back to you as soon as possible. In the meantime, you can also check out the FAQs on the website. And again, that address is hvrsd.org/vote.